Something happened last night. While the world was asleep, your name came up in a room where you were not present. Not as a memory. Not as a passing thought. But as a problem. They sat around a table. The people closest to this person's heart. The ones who claim to want the best for them. And they told your person that you are not right for them. They made a list. Every insecurity you carry. They wrote it down. Every mistake you've made. They used it as evidence. Every weakness you've ever shown. They pointed at it like it was permanent. They said the kindest thing to do was to forget you. They told your person to walk away. To erase you slowly. Quietly. To stop answering. To stop remembering. To marry someone safer. Someone they approve of. Someone whose past doesn't hold heavy moments. Someone whose story doesn't make people uncomfortable. And the whole time this was happening, you were asleep. You were dreaming of them. Maybe even smiling in your sleep. And they were in that room, holding the weight of everyone else's opinions. But here is what you don't know. Something else happened. Your person, they didn't agree. Not right away. They didn't defend you either. Not at first. They just sat there. Quiet. Listening. And that silence has already told you more than any words ever could. Have you noticed that? That when someone truly knows your heart, they don't need to fight for you loudly. They just stop talking. They stop explaining. They stop trying to make others understand something they were never meant to understand. Because the people in that room? They don't know you. Not really. They know the version of you that they heard about. The version that exists inside other people's fears. But your person, they've seen something else. A moment came. One final piece of this story you haven't heard yet. Someone at the table said your name again. Quietly this time. Almost like they were testing something. They said, "Are you really going to throw everything away for someone who isn't even here?" And your person looked up. They didn't get angry. They didn't walk out. They did something that nobody in that room expected. But before we go there, ask yourself this. Why does this story feel like it belongs to you? Perhaps you've had dreams about this person. Late night thoughts where your heart can't let go. Perhaps you've wondered if they're still fighting for you, or if they've already let you go. Maybe you've even prayed. And tonight you opened this video, you searched for this title, you came here looking for an answer. Don't skip. Don't leave yet. Because the next truth might be the most uncomfortable one of all. Your person didn't defend you in that room. Not because they don't believe in you. But because they realized something far more important. The moment someone has to defend your worth, they have already placed that worth in someone else's hands. And your person, quietly, in the middle of all that noise. They realized they don't need to convince anyone. They need to remember something. Something they almost forgot. A moment when you weren't broken. A moment when you were whole. A moment when this person looked at you and saw what nobody else could see. One more layer. The people in that room don't know about the late nights. The tears. The prayers you said with your eyes closed. The promises you made to yourself when nobody was watching. They don't know about the silent battles you've already won. They only see the battle you're still fighting. But your person, they've seen the invisible war. And they know something nobody else knows. That you are closer to breaking free than ever before. That's why they said nothing. Because sometimes, the most powerful response is silence. It lets the other person sit in their own noise. Their own fears. Their own control. And eventually, they have to face the truth. The truth that someone else's love isn't their decision to make. Another piece. You're wondering what happened next. You're waiting for the moment when your person finally spoke. And this is where everything changes. Because when they finally opened their mouth, it wasn't to fight. It wasn't to argue. It was to ask a question that nobody expected. And that question will stay with you long after this video ends. You. Yes, you. The one listening right now. The one carrying that ache. The one who still believes in something that others have called foolish. This moment is for you. Because what happens next might not be the answer you wanted. But it might be the one that sets your heart free. One final truth before you leave this part. Something happened in that room. Something that changed everything. And the response your person gave wasn't about you. It was about them. It was about the moment they realized they had been looking for permission from people who had never even known what love looks like. They understood that they don't need permission to love you. They never did. And what they said next, it will either break your heart or set it on fire. But you'll have to keep watching. Because this story is still unfolding. And the response. You came back. That means something. That means the first part of this story didn't leave you empty. It left you wanting. It left you standing at the edge of something you can't quite see yet. And that's exactly where you need to be. Because what happened in that room after the silence? It wasn't what anyone expected. Not even your person. Let's go back. The table was full. The voices were loud. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a reason why you weren't the one. And then, one of them leaned forward. They said your name again. Not with anger. With something worse. With pity. They said, we just want you to be happy. And this person, they can't give you that. They're too broken. Too complicated. Too much. That word. Too much. Have you heard that before? Have you felt that before? Like your emotions were too heavy for someone else to carry. Like your past was too dark for someone else to look at. Like your love was too intense for someone else to receive. That word has followed you. And in that room, it was used as evidence against you. But something strange happened. Your person, they didn't react to the word. They reacted to the feeling behind it. And that's when they finally spoke. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't defend you. They didn't even mention your name. Instead, they looked at the person who spoke, and they asked a question. A single question that made the whole room go quiet. They asked, have you ever loved someone so much that you couldn't explain it to anyone? Silence. No one answered. Because that kind of love? It doesn't come with explanations. It doesn't come with lists. It doesn't come with approval from anyone else. It just exists. And that's the part they don't understand. They think love is something you choose based on logic. Based on safety. Based on what other people think. But your person knows better. They know that love is not safe. Love is not logical. Love is not something you run past a committee. Love is the thing that happens when you stop trying to control everything. And in that moment, your person realized something they had been avoiding for a long time. They had been trying to fit you into a box that other people built. And you were never meant to fit in a box. You were meant to be free. You were meant to be wild. You were meant to be seen fully and loved recklessly. And they had been hiding that. Hiding you. Not because they were ashamed of you. But because they were afraid of what would happen if they loved you out loud. They were afraid of the judgment. The whispers. The loss of approval. The loss of people they thought were important. But in that room, surrounded by all those opinions, They realized something terrifying. They realized they were losing themselves. They were becoming someone who couldn't make their own decisions. Someone who needed permission to feel. Someone who was willing to trade your heart for peace with people who would never truly understand. Don't skip. Because the response that came next. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even loud. It was gentle. And that's what makes it so powerful. Your person looked around the table. They saw every face. Every expectation. Every fear. And then they said, I hear you. I understand why you think that. But I need you to understand something too. Another pause. Another moment of stillness. And then they said, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. But they didn't finish that sentence. They stopped. They held back the full truth. Not because they were afraid. But because they realized something even more important. The people in that room didn't deserve the full truth. They hadn't earned it. They hadn't walked with you through the hard nights. They hadn't seen you cry. They hadn't held you when you felt like giving up. They hadn't been there. So why should they get to hear the most sacred thing? Why should they get to witness the depth of someone else's love when they only know the surface? Your person understood. That some things are not meant to be explained. Some things are meant to be felt. Some things are meant to be protected. And you are one of those things. Another layer. The conversation didn't end there. The table didn't fall apart. No one walked out. But something shifted. Something invisible. Something that no one could see. Your person had drawn a line. Not in anger. But in truth. They didn't reject the people in that room. They didn't fight them. They simply stopped asking for their permission. And that is the most dangerous thing you can do. Because the moment you stop asking for permission, you take back your power. You become free. And freedom is terrifying to people who need control. The people around that table felt it. They felt your person slip away from them. And that's when they did something unexpected. They got quieter. They got softer. They started to doubt their own certainty. One of them even whispered, maybe we don't know them as well as we thought. That's the thing about love. When someone truly loves, it has a way of making other people uncomfortable. Because it forces them to look at their own lack of love. Their own fear. Their own smallness. And sometimes, when they see real love, they don't know what to do with it. So they try to destroy it. But not this time. Your person held steady. And something else happened. Another truth. Another piece of this story that hasn't been told yet. In the middle of all that tension, your person smiled. Not a smile of mockery. Not a smile of arrogance. A smile of peace. A smile of certainty. Because they had made a decision. And that decision, it wasn't about you. It was about them. It was about who they wanted to become. It was about the kind of heart they wanted to carry. And in that smile, they gave you something. A gift. Something that no one in that room could take away. But you still don't know what it is. You're still waiting for the answer. The response. The final word. And that's okay. Because the journey is not over. The journey has barely begun. One more layer before we close this part. Your person walked away from that table. Not physically. But emotionally. They detached from the need to be understood. They detached from the need to be approved. And in that detachment, they found something they had been missing for a very long time. They found themselves. And you are a part of that. You are part of their becoming. You are not the problem. You are not the mistake. You are not the complication. You are the reason they started asking harder questions. You are the reason they began to see through the illusions. You are the reason they are no longer afraid to be alone with their own truth. So what did they say? What was their response? You'll get closer in the next part. But for now, remember this. The people who try to separate you from someone you love, they are not the enemy. They are the mirror. And what your person saw in that mirror. Here you are again. That means the pull is real. That means something inside you refuses to let this story go. And that's good. Because the story isn't done with you yet. Let's go deeper now. Past the table. Past the voices. Past the silence that hung in that room like fog. Your person left that gathering. Not dramatically. Not with a slam of the door. But quietly. They walked out into the night air. And something happened. Something they didn't expect. They started walking without knowing where they were going. Their feet just moved. And their heart? Their heart finally started to breathe. Have you ever felt that? That moment when you've been holding something so tightly. And then you let go. And the relief is almost painful. That was your person in that moment. They walked past streetlights. Past houses where families were asleep. Past the life everyone expected them to live. And they stopped. Right in the middle of the sidewalk. And they laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not a sad laugh. A laugh of recognition. A laugh that said, I almost lost myself trying to keep everyone else comfortable. They looked up at the sky. And they thought of you. Not in a desperate way. Not in a longing way. But in a way that felt like coming home. They thought of your eyes. The way you look at them like they're the most important person in the world. Even when they don't feel important. Even when they feel small. Even when they've disappointed you. You still look at them that way. And in that moment, standing under the stars, they realized something. The people in that room? They see what you've done wrong. But they don't see what you've survived. They don't see the battles you've already won. They don't see the person you're becoming. They see the mess. But your person? They see the masterpiece in progress. And that's the difference. One more layer. Let's go back inside that room for a moment. Because something else happened. After your person left, the people who stayed behind started talking again. But the tone changed. The energy shifted. One of them said, "Did we go too far?" Another one said, "Maybe we don't have the full picture." And then the one who started it all? The one who was so certain you were wrong? They went quiet. They picked up their glass. They stared at it. And they said something that nobody expected. They said, "I've never seen them look at anyone that way." That way. Those two words changed everything. Because it wasn't about what they said about you. It was about what they saw in your person. They saw something they couldn't control. Something they couldn't explain. Something they couldn't dismiss. They saw love. Real love. Not the comfortable kind. Not the convenient kind. The kind that terrifies people. The kind that changes people. The kind that makes you willing to lose everything for someone else. And that is what they couldn't stand. Because they had never felt that. And they couldn't understand it. Don't skip. Because this next part is for you. The one who has been waiting. The one who has been hoping. The one who has been wondering if they're still thinking about you. They are. But not the way you think. They're not thinking about you with guilt. They're not thinking about you with obligation. They're thinking about you with certainty. Certainty that you are not a mistake. Certainty that you are not a phase. Certainty that you are not someone to be outgrown. They're thinking about you like a truth they can no longer ignore. And that truth is becoming louder every day. Have you noticed something? Have you noticed that the more you try to let go, the more this person shows up in your mind? That's not random. That's not your heart playing tricks on you. That's the connection. That's the bond that others can't see. That's the thread that keeps pulling you back to each other. And that thread? It's stronger than any opinion. It's stronger than any fear. It's stronger than any room full of people who don't believe in you. Another truth. Your person didn't just walk away from that table. They walked away from a version of themselves. A version that was always asking for permission. A version that was always seeking approval. A version that was always afraid of being misunderstood. They left that person behind. And they're not going back. But here's the part you need to hear. The part that will make your heart settle. They didn't make a decision about you. They made a decision about themselves. They decided to stop living for other people. They decided to stop shrinking. They decided to stop hiding what they feel. And that decision, it includes you. It has to. Because you are part of who they are becoming. You are part of their awakening. You are part of their courage. They can't separate from you without losing themselves. And they know that now. One more piece. They whispered your name. Not with sadness. Not with longing. With peace. With acceptance. With a quiet knowing that you are already part of them. And that no conversation can change that. No opinion can change that. No distance can change that. You are already woven into their heart. And that's why they don't need to fight for you. Because you're not something to fight for. You're something to honor. Something to protect. Something to cherish. And they are learning how to do that. Quietly. Patiently. Without needing to prove it to anyone. So what did they say? What was the final response? You're almost there. But not yet. Because the real answer isn't in what they said to the people in that room. The real answer is in what they're about to say to you. And that? That is still unfolding. That is still being written. That is still waiting for the right moment. You're still here. That means something is stirring deep inside you. Something that won't let you look away. Something that recognizes this story as your own. And you're right to stay. Because what comes next? It changes everything. Let's go back to that morning. Your person woke up. They whispered your name. And then something shifted. They didn't get out of bed right away. They just lay there. Staring at the ceiling. Thinking about all the moments that led to this. All the little signs they ignored. All the times they pushed you away because they were scared. All the times they let someone else's voice drown out their own heart. And for the first time, they felt regret. Not regret for loving you. Regret for not showing it. Regret for not protecting you. Regret for letting you carry the weight of their silence. They thought about the times you reached out. And they pulled back. The times you opened up. And they shut down. The times you needed reassurance. And they gave you doubt. They thought about your face. The way your eyes would search theirs for something. Anything. A sign. A clue. A hint that they still believed in you. And they realized. They had been starving you. Not with cruelty. But with fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being the one who loves too much. And in that moment, They made a decision. A decision that had nothing to do with the people in that room. A decision that had everything to do with you. Don't skip. Because what they decided? It's not what you think. They didn't decide to call you. They didn't decide to text you. They didn't decide to fight for you in the way the world expects. They decided something far more powerful. They decided to stop hiding. Not from you. From themselves. They decided to face the truth they had been running from. The truth that they love you. Not in a convenient way. Not in a conditional way. Not in a way that fits into someone else's timeline. They love you in a way that scares them. In a way that makes them feel exposed. In a way that makes them feel like they have everything to lose. And that is exactly why they need to act. Another layer. Let me tell you something about that room. Those people who told them to forget you. They weren't evil. They weren't villains. They were scared. Scared of what you represent. Scared of change. Scared of losing control over someone they care about. But fear is a liar. And they were speaking lies. Lies about your character. Lies about your past. Lies about your potential. And your person? They heard every single lie. And they didn't believe any of them. Not because they're naive. But because they know you. They know the version of you that doesn't show up in conversations. The version of you that only comes out when the world is quiet. The version of you that you hide from everyone else. They know that version. And that version? It's beautiful. It's kind. It's deserving of everything good. And your person knows that. Even when they forget to show it. Even when they get lost in their own fear. They know. And that knowing? It's what kept them in that room. It's what kept them from walking out earlier. It's what made them stay and listen to all those opinions. Because they needed to hear how wrong everyone else was. They needed to hear it with their own ears. So they would never doubt again. So they would never wonder if they made the right choice. They needed to hear the lies. So they could fully embrace the truth. Another piece. Something else happened that morning. After they whispered your name. They picked up their phone. They scrolled through old messages. Old photos. Old memories. They stopped at one. A photo of you. Not a posed photo. Not a perfect photo. A real one. One where you were laughing. One where your eyes were bright. One where you looked at them like they were the whole world. And they smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. And they whispered something else. They whispered. I'm sorry I made you wait so long. Those words. They meant everything. Because they weren't just an apology. They were a promise. A promise that the waiting is over. A promise that they're done being afraid. A promise that they're ready. But here's the thing. You don't know that. You're still sitting there. Wondering. Hopeful but cautious. Wanting to believe but afraid to be hurt again. You're still waiting for the call that might never come. Still waiting for the message that might never arrive. Still waiting for the sign. And that's okay. Because you don't need to rush. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove anything. Your person is already moving. Already shifting. Already becoming the version of themselves that can love you the way you deserve. And that journey? It's happening right now. While you're watching this. While you're hoping. While you're breathing. It's happening. One more layer. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed that this story keeps unfolding? That every time you think you've reached the answer, another door opens? Another truth appears. Another layer reveals itself. That's not an accident. That's the nature of real love. It never fully reveals itself at once. It grows. It deepens. It becomes more complex over time. And that's what's happening here. Your person is growing. You are growing. The connection is growing. And the response? The final response? It's still in motion. It's still being shaped. It's still waiting for the right moment to land. But let me tell you something. When that moment comes, it won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. It won't be what you expected. It will be quiet. It will be gentle. It will be true. And it will leave no room for doubt. So stay. Stay a little longer. Because the final piece is coming. The response is near. And you? You're about to hear something that will change the way you see everything. Something that will make all this waiting worth it. Something that will heal the part of you that thought you weren't enough. You stayed. Through every layer. Through every pause. Through every moment of not knowing. That takes courage. That takes faith. That takes something deep inside you that refuses to give up. And that something? It's about to be rewarded. Let's go back to that morning one final time. Your person put down the phone. They got out of bed. They walked to the window. And they looked out at the world. The same world that had been telling them who to be. The same world that had been telling them who to love. The same world that had been telling them you weren't enough. And they made a choice. Not a choice about you. A choice about themselves. They chose to stop living in other people's stories. They chose to stop being a character in someone else's narrative. They chose to become the author of their own life. And in that choice, you became part of their story. Not as a subplot. Not as a side character. Not as a mistake they needed to correct. But as the main chapter. The one everything else leads to. The one that gives meaning to everything that came before. Don't skip. Because what happened next? It will make your heart race. Your person picked up their phone again. But this time, they didn't scroll through old photos. They didn't read old messages. They opened a blank message. They typed. They erased. They typed again. They erased again. They did this 7 times. 7 times they tried to find the right words. 7 times they failed. And then, they stopped trying. They put the phone down. They walked away. And they did something you didn't expect. They went to a mirror. They looked at themselves. And they asked a question. A question that had nothing to do with you. A question that had everything to do with them. They asked, who am I without their approval? And the answer? It scared them. Because for the first time, they didn't know. They had spent so long being who everyone else wanted them to be, that they had forgotten who they really were. And that realization? It broke something open inside them. Not in a painful way. In a freeing way. In a way that made them feel light. In a way that made them feel like they could finally breathe. Because they understood. They understood that they couldn't love you properly. Until they loved themselves properly. They couldn't choose you fully. Until they chose themselves fully. They couldn't stand by you. Until they could stand on their own. And that? That is what they were finally doing. Another layer. Let me tell you something about that moment. The moment they looked in the mirror. The moment they asked that question. The moment they realized they had been lost. That moment changed everything. Because in that moment, they didn't think about you. They didn't think about the people in that room. They didn't think about the past or the future. They just were. They were present. They were real. They were honest. And in that honesty, they found something they had been searching for. They found their voice. Not the voice that pleases everyone. Not the voice that avoids conflict. Not the voice that says what people want to hear. Their real voice. The voice that had been buried under years of fear. The voice that had been silenced by 1,000 opinions. The voice that had been waiting for this exact moment to speak. And when that voice spoke, it said something simple. Something profound. Something that would change everything. It said, "I choose me." And in choosing themselves, they chose you. Because you are part of them. You are not separate. You are not an addition. You are not an option. You are woven into who they are. And they finally understood that. One more piece. Now let's go back to the room one last time. Because something else happened. Something you need to know. After your person left that night, the people who stayed behind didn't sleep well. They couldn't. Because something had shifted. Something had broken. Something they couldn't fix. The person who started the whole conversation? The one who was so certain you were wrong? They couldn't stop thinking about your person's face. The way they looked when they walked out. The way they held themselves. The way they didn't argue. The way they didn't defend. The way they just left. And that bothered them. Because they realized something. They realized that your person wasn't running from you. They were running toward themselves. And that was more powerful than any argument. That was more powerful than any defense. That was more powerful than any words. Because it meant that your person had finally found something worth fighting for. And that something was you. But also them. And the combination? It was unstoppable. Another truth. Your person is not coming back to the table. They're not going to explain themselves. They're not going to ask for forgiveness. They're not going to try to make anyone understand. They're moving forward. And that forward motion? It's leading straight to you. But here's the thing. They're not rushing. They're not desperate. They're not coming to you because they need you. They're coming to you because they want you. Because they choose you. Because they see you clearly. Because they know exactly who they're choosing. And that makes all the difference. You've been chosen. Not because you're perfect. Not because you're easy. Not because you fit into someone's idea of what love should look like. You've been chosen because you're real. Because you're whole. Because you're exactly who they need. And they finally have the courage to admit it. One more layer. So what did they say? What was their response? You've been waiting through all these parts. All these layers. All these moments of almost knowing. And now you're about to hear it. But let me tell you something first. The response isn't a sentence. It isn't a text. It isn't a phone call. It isn't a grand gesture. The response is a movement. A shift. A turning. A decision that has already been made. And that decision? It's already reaching you. It's already in the air. It's already on its way. You might feel it right now. That warmth in your chest. That quiet knowing. That sense that something is different. That's the response. That's their heart reaching across the distance. That's their truth finally finding its way to you. And what they said. What they're about to say. It's simple. It's honest. It's theirs. This is it. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Every part before this, every layer, every pause, every unanswered question. It all led here. And what you're about to hear? It will settle something deep inside you. Something that has been restless for a long time. Let's go back to that morning. Your person looked in the mirror. They found their voice. They chose themselves. And then they did something extraordinary. They walked out of their house. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't have a plan. They didn't rehearse anything. They just walked. Their feet carried them through streets they'd walked 1,000 times. But everything looked different. The colors were brighter. The air was fresher. The world felt possible. And then they stopped. They stopped right in front of a place they hadn't visited in years. A place that held memories. A place that held you. It was a bench. A simple wooden bench in a park. The same bench where you once sat together. The same bench where you talked about your dreams. The same bench where they first realized they loved you. And they sat down. They sat in that exact spot. And they closed their eyes. They remembered everything. The way you laughed. The way you leaned into them. The way you looked at them like they were already whole. The way you believed in them before they believed in themselves. And in that moment, the response became clear. Not a response to the people in that room. Not a response to their own fears. Not a response to the pressure. But a response to you. A response that had been waiting inside them all along. A response that was finally ready to be spoken. Don't skip. Because what they said next, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was whispered. It was broken. It was real. They said, "I'm sorry." 2 words. 2 simple words. But they carried the weight of everything. Every moment of silence. Every moment of doubt. Every moment they made you feel invisible. Every moment they chose fear over love. They were sorry. Not because they had to be. Not because someone told them to be. But because they finally understood. They understood what it cost you. They understood what you carried alone. They understood that while they were hiding in that room, you were out in the world, hoping. Waiting. Believing. And you never stopped. Even when you had every reason to. Even when the silence was deafening. Even when the doubt crept in. You kept believing. And that? That broke them. In the best way possible. Because they realized something. They realized that your love wasn't fragile. It wasn't conditional. It wasn't dependent on their response. Your love was steady. Your love was patient. Your love was a gift they didn't deserve. And they wanted to deserve it. Another layer. Let me tell you what happened next. They didn't send a text. They didn't make a call. They didn't write a letter. They sat on that bench. And they spoke to you. Not in a way that you could hear. But in a way that the universe could hear. In a way that your heart could feel. They said, "I see you now. Really see you. Not the version of you that others described. Not the version of you that I was afraid of. But the real you. The one who always showed up. The one who never gave up on me. The one who believed in us when I couldn't." And then they paused. They took a breath. And they said something that will stay with you forever. They said, "I don't need to forget you. I need to remember who I am when I'm with you. Because that person is the best version of me. And I've been hiding from that person for too long." They looked up at the sky. The same sky you might be looking at right now. And they made a promise. Not a promise to you. Not a promise to anyone else. A promise to themselves. A promise that they would never let fear make their decisions again. A promise that they would never let someone else's voice drown out their own. A promise that they would choose love. Even when it was hard. Even when it was scary. Even when it meant losing approval. Because they finally understood. The only approval that matters is their own. And they approve. They approve of you. They approve of them. They approve of this. One more piece. But here's the part you need to hear. The part that changes everything. That response? It wasn't just words on a bench. It was a turning. A shift in the fabric of things. A decision that sent ripples through the invisible world. And those ripples? They're reaching you right now. That's why you're still watching. That's why you couldn't stop. That's why something inside you kept saying, "Don't leave. Stay." The answer is coming. It was coming. It is coming. It's already here. But not in the way you expected. Because the response isn't a message. It isn't a phone call. It isn't a grand reunion. The response is a feeling. A feeling that has been growing inside you. A feeling that you are not forgotten. A feeling that you are not a mistake. A feeling that you are not alone. That feeling? It's their response. It's their heart reaching across the distance. It's their love finally finding its way to you. And it says, "I choose you. Not because I have to. Not because I'm lonely. Not because I'm settling. I choose you because you are the only one who makes me feel like myself. I choose you because you are the only one who sees me. I choose you because you are the only one who makes me brave." That's the response. That's the answer. That's the truth you've been waiting for. One more layer before we close. Your person is still sitting on that bench. They're still looking at the sky. They're still holding that feeling. And now? They're waiting. Not waiting for the right moment. Not waiting for permission. Not waiting for fear to disappear. They're waiting for the courage to show up fully. And they're almost there. They're closer than they've ever been. And when they do show up, it won't be with a speech. It won't be with a plan. It will be with presence. With honesty. With the simple truth that they have been carrying in their heart all along. The truth that you are the one. The only one. The one they should have chosen from the beginning. And now? They're choosing you. Completely. Fully. Without reservation. Without hesitation. Without doubt. And that? That is the response. That is the answer. That is the thing that will finally set your heart free. Not because you needed their approval. But that's for the next part. Because this story? It's not over.